Welcome to Purpose. I'm your host, Corie Clark. I'm just a normal girl who decided to go for it. I created a thriving business from the ground up without sacrificing my sanity, and I believe that you can do the same. You were created on purpose, for a purpose, and I fully believe you can turn that purpose into profit. Each week, I'm going to bring you practical advice to help you live your life and grow your business on purpose. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Purpose. I'm your host, Corie Clark, and I just want to thank you guys so much for showing up every week and tuning in and leaving your reviews and commenting on Instagram, sharing the podcast with your followers, and I just really appreciate it, and I love getting to know all of my listeners. So if you haven't yet, make sure you leave a review on iTunes. Even if you're listening on a different device or a different app, if you're listening on Spotify or Stitcher, that's awesome. But I would love for you to just head on over to iTunes and leave a review for the podcast. And when you share on Instagram, be sure to tag me at Corie Clark, because that is my favorite place to hang out. And I'm the one who's in my DMs chatting with my listeners and my audience. And I just love getting to know you guys and getting to know how I can serve you better. So let's jump into today's interview. I am interviewing my dear friend, Courtney Elmer. And Courtney is a lifestyle strategist, a speaker, and a stress expert. Hello, we all need a stress expert in our lives, right? She is dedicated to helping high-achieving women stress less and live more. So in this episode, you guys, it's so special because Courtney gets vulnerable with us, and she shares how she had a huge wake-up call at the age of 25 when she was diagnosed with cancer. And she realized that life is just way too short to be stressed out and overwhelmed and burnt out. And that's where she found her inspiration to help other women. And she is the creator of the StressLESS system. And she's just so helpful and kind and courteous and gracious and loving. And I just feel this special connection between the two of us because our stories are so aligned in how we want to serve the world. So I'm really excited for you guys to get to know Courtney. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview.
All right, you guys, I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend, Courtney. Courtney, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Corie, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for our conversation.
I know, me too. So Courtney and I met at a brand building, like 1-day event or 2-day event that Jasmine Star hosted last year. And we became fast friends, and I just love Courtney so much. And I love her mission to help women stress less because we all need less stress. So Courtney, can you share a little bit of your story about what led you to doing this for people?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a lifestyle strategist, I'm a speaker and a stress expert. And like you said, Corie, like helping women stress less is my passion. Like I really believe I've been put on this earth to just inspire and communicate to women everywhere that they're worthy of inner peace and support them in taking action to achieve it. And I really think that this has been written on my heart because of my life before and really where I came from. When I first jumped into my career, I jumped into the corporate world of 9 to 5 and was really determined to climb my way up that ladder like as fast as possible. I knew that I wanted to have a business of my own one day, but I didn't really know what that was going to look like. I just knew that I needed to start saving some money, setting aside some capital so that I could open up, whatever business that would be. So in my mind, I thought the harder I worked, the more I worked, the faster I would be able to grow and climb my way up that ladder, earning pay raises and promotions and getting noticed, getting recognized. And so I was that girl that would stay at the office, late in the day or work through her lunch or take work home with her on the weekends. And around that same time, I was introduced to the field of network marketing. And I had never heard of that before, but being young, thought, wow, this would be a really great way for me to get some business experience without the high overhead costs of a traditional business, and that this could maybe catapult me into whatever this future business was. Again, was just an idea in my head. I didn't even know what that was going to look like. But I thought, if I could just kind of get my feet wet with working with clients, sales, I believe that's like one of the fastest ways you can learn, interpersonal relations and communications and all of this. So I jumped into that with both feet and started building a team on the side. So I was working 9 to 5 during the day, building that on the nights and weekends, and very quickly grew a big team. Like, I was going on all expense paid vacations from the company. I had earned the luxury car. I was, in a position where I could walk away from my 9 to 5. And so from the outside looking in, like, anyone would have thought, wow, Courtney has it together. Like, she is so successful. She's really got this going on. I had met the love of my life. Like, we had fallen in love. We were planning our wedding. So all of these things were going well. But like, Corie, on the inside, I felt so empty. And I would go to bed at night, and it was like, I tell this story and I'm like, it's like when the lights were off and the makeup was off and I was just laying in bed, like, that was when the tears would just roll down my face, because I felt like I was just going through the motions. Like, I felt like there was something I was supposed to be doing with my life, but I didn't know what it was. And I was so burnt out and so exhausted and so stressed and so anxious all the time that I couldn't even see, where I was headed anymore and what I was even working so hard toward. And so I got married, and 2 days after we got back home from our honeymoon, I went to the doctor because I had had a sinus infection before the wedding. And, was going in for just a follow-up visit. And I thought that I would either get a prescription if I was still sick, or if I was fine, like, just a clean bill of health, like, check up, you're good, go on your way. But instead, what I got that day was a cancer diagnosis.
Wow.
I was 25. I had just gotten married. And in that moment, I can remember this like it was yesterday, just sitting in that chair in the doctor's office, like, goosebumps, and just knowing in my heart that something had to change. I knew I had to figure out a different way to have the success that I wanted to have, but not at the expense of my relationships and my health and my life.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, I had lived kind of this all or nothing mentality where it was either I'm successful or I'm failing. I can either have success or I can have a life, but I can't have both. And that was the story that I was telling myself. But when everything came to a screeching halt that day, I knew that I had to figure out a different way. I wanted to have, I call it now, a both and life, where I could have both success and a life I loved, and figure out how to do that without the stress.
Wow. That is so powerful. And I feel like so many women can feel the same way, even women who may not necessarily be growing a business. Like, as a wife and a mom and a friend, like, we try to do it all. And, but we do it like for the sake of like, whatever that thing is that we're going after, and we go all in on it. And then we end up sacrificing something, our health, or our relationships with the people we love the most, usually, is who it ends up, really hurting. Wow. That's amazing. That's so powerful. So then what was your, like, how did you move forward from that to start to change? Like, that's a huge wake up call that a lot of people don't get, something like that. And sometimes it's too late. Maybe it comes later in life. So you were at such a young age. So, what kind of changes did you start to make when you had that?
Yeah, I wish I could say that, like, I woke up the next day and my whole life looked totally different and I did like this complete 180 and it was happily ever after, but that's like not how it went at all. It was a very slow process because my identity had become so wrapped up in my work that if I wasn't working, I didn't know who I was. And so that was a very scary, very out of comfort zone feeling for me. And what had happened was I had begun to measure my self-worth and my satisfaction based on whether or not I had achieved the goals that I had set for myself, whatever those goals might have been, income goals or business goals or any type of goals. And so I had to really first start by just figuring out and getting back in touch with the authentic, real me. Like, who was she? And rediscovering her, like, who was she? What is she like? What does she want to be doing? What lights her up? What is she sick and tired of doing that is not serving her or others anymore? What does she want to have more of in her life? And really just to take some time with that, And when I was going through the radiation treatment, like that was the first time I was forced to slow down ever in my life in a way that I never had before. And it was very hard because I'm a high achiever by nature. I'm a doer. I'm a go-getter. Like I'm always doing something. But that's in that quiet and in that space when I had to rest because I had to heal. That's when I was really able to think and to really hear myself think.
Yeah.
And to allow myself that space. And so that's what I did, was to start to just explore myself and who I really was. And then once I got clear on that, I just really felt this tug towards serving other women and helping them before it got that bad. Like, because I believe it doesn't have to get that bad. You know, you shouldn't have to have that big of a wake up call, life crisis or health or relationship crisis to have that wake up call. There's things that you can start doing now, you know, to shift that story and to start creating the life you want without the stress and the overwhelm that we often think has to just is part of it and goes along with it.
Yeah, that's so true. And because it shouldn't have to take that wake up call. And I think we get caught in this like hamster wheel of, you know, living our lives and doing what we're supposed to do and doing what we have to do. And we forget who we truly are. And do you think that that's like, what would you say to someone, or what do you say to these women when you're helping them? You know, what could be that trigger for them when if it's not a health scare, like, you know, how do you get them to shift that thinking to start really like tapping into that, who they are, who they really are, and the life they want to live?
Yeah, such a good question. A couple of things that come to mind immediately. First is that stress and overwhelm is always an indicator of something deeper. It's a symptom. We often don't see it as a symptom because we start to think that it's normal and that's just how life is. It's a crazy world. It's busy. It's hectic, you know, especially if you've got kids and you're running a business, like you do have a lot of roles that you're fulfilling, a lot of hats that you're wearing. And so what I always teach my clients and just women that I work with, whether I'm speaking or even just in conversation, is that when you notice that stress and overwhelm, go deeper. It's not, the stress and overwhelm is indicating that something is going on under the surface, that something is off track. And so it usually indicates that you either aren't focused on the right things, your priorities are out of alignment, or that you don't have a system to fall back on to be able to get yourself back on track. So that's why it just feels like you're on that hamster wheel, spinning your wheels, you know, or treading water and just not really making any real progress. And that's where you get that stuck feeling.
Totally.
And then, yeah, I know. And that is something that so many women struggle with too, I feel like. It's just like this feeling of taking one step forward and two back. Like just, you know, they're working so hard, but they don't feel like they're getting anywhere. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that comes to mind is just to remember that you are not your role. You are worth so much more than the hats that you wear. And so, yes, while you have a life and you have those hats that you are required to wear, you know, as a wife, as a mom, as a business owner, as a daughter, as a sister, as a friend, you and who you are and who you've been put on this earth to be is worth so much more than the role that you fulfill. So it's just so key to remember. And it's something I remind myself of daily because like you said, we do get so caught up in just our lives, you know, and then what's coming next? What's the next thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And we get so attached to that thing, you know, whether it's our business or, you know, I mean, it can even happen with like our kids. Like we find our identity in how good of a mom we are or how good of a wife we are. But I want to go back a little bit to what you were talking about, the stress being attached to, and like not having a system to fall back on. So like, do you just mean like basic systems, like in how you live your life, like on a day-to-day basis, or what did you mean by that?
Yes. So in part, I've actually developed what I call the StressLESS system, which is a series of 6 steps that I teach to help women so that they know that when that stress and overwhelm come, they can go back to those steps and find exactly where they're off track and kind of bring themselves back. And really what the steps are, it's a combination of mindset and strategy. Because oftentimes we're taught the mindset stuff, but not like the practical how to implement it. Or we're taught how to implement, but the mindset stuff is what's holding us back and we don't even realize it, you know?
Yeah.
So you've got to have both. Like you've got to have a good system to be able to fall back on so that you can catch yourself if it's your mindset that's off track, or if it's your action plan or your strategy. And you would know a lot about this, with your planners and all the amazing systems you've created to help women get organized and stuff. Like if something in that is off track, then of course you're going to notice stress and overwhelm from that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I know I'm a huge believer in having systems and stuff in place, but sometimes even like you said, like it is so much mindset, because you could have the perfect system and you can have all these little, rules and regulations and how you take care of your life, and you could be like super strict with your habits, and but then it comes back to that fulfillment factor, and like you said, even like it could be just like you're focusing on the wrong things. And yeah, I mean, I've totally been like what you're talking about is kind of where I was when I first started. So we have like very similar paths that we've been on. I didn't have any sort of health scare, but I had just that feeling of like, what the heck am I doing with my life? Like I'm running ragged and I have nothing to show for it.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a very empty feeling, like when you wake up and recognize that. And I think it feels so empty because we've been called to something greater, and it's just about discovering that. And the piece about the mindset and the strategy, I feel like this is something I see often, is like once we get along this journey of like growth and personal development, we find our comfort zone in one or the other. And the other one always prevents us from growing. The other one's always what we need. So some people find themselves in the comfort zone of like the mindset. They love reading the books and going to the conferences and like soaking in the knowledge, but they're not actually taking the action. They're not doing the how-to. Or you have the other person who's super organized. Like they've got all the how-tos in place. They're doing the day-to-day stuff, but their mindset's what's holding them back.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you're stuck, if you're listening, you feel like you're stuck or struggling, like do a little self-assessment and just figure out like, where's my comfort zone? Like, am I more at home in the mindset work? Do I need to be focusing more on the how-to, or vice versa? Am I doing, more of the how-to stuff, but maybe it's something in my mindset or my beliefs that's holding me back, and to lean into that. Because it feels uncomfortable and a little scary because it might not be natural or what our natural tendency is, but it's the other piece of what you need, in order to have like that complete picture and that success.
That's totally. So then when did you decide to actually, you had this tug in your heart to help other women. What did that look like, and how did you start helping other women?
Yeah. So I had grown my network marketing business to very large at that point, self-sustaining, and I just felt super empty. And I was like, I'm done with this. I need to be doing something more. I knew that I had gifts and talents that I wasn't using. And I felt like I was wasting them, the stuff that God had given me that I just was like letting go to waste. And so I knew that I wanted to start using my gifts of speaking and writing, and in some way using that to serve women. And I didn't know the first thing about setting up a business. I didn't even know what my business was going to look like. I had heard of coaches, but I'm like, I don't know. Like, is that what I'm really going to be doing? It was so vague at that point. Like, it's laughable now, but I'm like, I had no idea. But, so what I did was I decided, I'm like, I need someone to tell me like what I need to be doing. I need to hire a mentor. So I sat my husband down and I'm like, babe, look, I really want to hire someone that can help me get my business set up and off the ground, and can help me with, my messaging, and just kind of get like, what am I even offering to these people? How am I going to help them? How am I going to package all this together? So he was on board. He's like, okay, but my husband's an engineer. You have to understand, like, if you're married to an engineer, if you have that kind of analytical brain, like he loves the spreadsheets and like the breakdown of everything. So he's like, look, I want you to interview a few different coaches, because I already found someone that I thought I would really like, but that we would get along well. But he was like, you need to like just see what's out there, interview a bunch of people, and then decide. So I did that. To make a long story short, I broke it all out for him into a spreadsheet, what the investment was, what they taught, like all these
I love it.
8 different coaches I did. But I really wanted to convince him that this was what I needed. So I sat him down over breakfast one morning and I showed him everything. And my husband, I'm so blessed. Like, he's so supportive of my dreams and of everything, and he's had my back since day one, whatever business venture I'm into, at the time. And he's been through several with me.
Yeah.
This one's here to stick. But along the way to find it, it was like,
Yes.
okay, what are you doing now? But anyway, so he sat down and, he's like, babe, I support you, but let's figure it out. Like, you're going to have to figure out a way, when you make that investment, how's your business going to pay you back? Like, this is a business and you got to like start thinking that way. So he really helped me get started. And with that very first mentor, I learned so much from her. And that really set me on the path of growth, the trajectory, I guess I should say, of growth that I'm on now. It's already on a path of growth and development, but that totally shifted things for me. And she helped me with kind of the ins and outs of setting up the business itself, and then also communicating what I did and how I could help people, kind of putting my story into that as well. So,
yeah. Wow. That's really awesome. So how long have you been doing this now?
Yeah. So officially for 2 years, just over 2 years.
Okay. That's so awesome. And I just love seeing your success and all the women that you're helping. And what has it been like for you? Because it's been interesting for me, kind of like sharing the same mindset and vision as you. And then as you're growing your business, you're taking on more responsibilities. So it's like I've found myself kind of in this like tug of war where it's like, I got my life in order, and then it was like, okay, now I'm helping other people, but I've taken on so many more responsibilities that now I start sometimes to feel that like overwhelm again. And it's like, oh my gosh, I kind of battle with this, like, I'm trying to help people with their overwhelm, but I'm sitting here completely overwhelmed. So how have you kind of found that balance for yourself, growing your business and still maintaining that like stress-less lifestyle?
Yes, I'm glad you asked this because it's such an interesting question. It's not one that I get very often, but I love talking about this because it's something that's so important to me, is to live with that integrity, right? Like if I'm out here like the stress less coach and helping people stress less, well, I better like have my life together. And what happens in those moments where I feel like I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed and stuff is like the sky is falling? Because it happens and we're human.
Exactly.
So I always come back to what I teach, because I know that what I teach has also been what's been true in my life. Everything that I teach, I've learned from experience. I do have coaching certifications and stuff like that, but that's not really what's taught me what I know in terms of the experiences that have shaped, my life. And so I always come back to, okay, where am I off track? What have I gotten away from? Have I gotten away from my dream? Have I gotten away from my vision? Have I gotten out of touch with my definitions of things? Where are my boundaries clearly defined? What is my definition of success? What is my definition of being a good mother or a good wife? Have I gotten away from that? Has that gotten blurry? Am I overcommitting myself to things that I shouldn't be, or, saying yes when I know I should be saying no? And really just coming back to like these elementary questions, asking myself, like, and tapping in and getting back on track. Because it is difficult, when you're growing a business, because like you said, as you grow, you do have more responsibilities. And like, what's that saying? It's like, the bigger the paycheck, the bigger the problem, or something, or the bigger the problems you solve, maybe. I don't know how it goes. Something along those lines. I feel like bigger problems come with bigger paychecks. Yeah, all the above. But yeah, that's really it, and that's something that I have always from day one said in my business, that I would lead with transparency. And so with my audience, I'm very transparent with them. Like if I am stressed, I tell them, and I'm like, you know what, this is what I'm doing about it. And if you find yourself in this situation, this is what I would recommend. Instead of trying to hide that and always kind of put out that front, like, oh, I've got it together. Like, you should follow me because I have a perfect life. Like, no, that's actually not true. But I tell people, I'm like, because I'm in the trenches with you and I'm learning this and doing this with you, just because I'm met with challenges, it just means that I get to learn from it so that I can teach you when you get to that point in your journey. I think people appreciate that. So I think as business owners too, as you grow, and recognize that, with more power comes more responsibility, that the more transparent you are about that, and the more you can just own wherever you are, without judging yourself, that others won't judge you either. And they'll actually respect you for it.
Yeah, totally. And I do think like, I like that you just kind of ask yourself those questions almost like you would ask a client right at the beginning. And, I've had to do the same things like several times. Like there's been times where my husband's like, you wrote a book about that. Like if I start to get overwhelmed, I'm like, I know I need to take my own advice. And then I do. It's like just honestly, even just taking like a half hour to sit and just think about your life and where it's headed and how you're feeling about things, it can totally change your perspective on, the way things are going. And I think sometimes it really is that simple and people don't realize it. It's not easy to do because sometimes you do have to do some work to like weed out some of the unimportant things from your life, but it really comes down to some simple truths and, putting yourself and your family first again and reassessing where you are. So
yeah, and
I love
the
that.
reason, yes, and I'm so glad you said that, because the reason that happens too is like, just like I had mentioned, going through the radiation treatment was the first time I was forced to slow down. It is so easy to get away from why we're doing what we're doing in the first place when we get caught up in just the day-to-day life stuff that happens. And so to slow down like that, and even just that 15-20 minutes to listen to yourself think, to notice the thoughts that are going through your head, to notice the feelings that you're feeling. Yes, it is so powerful. I call it wearing the CEO hat of your business. It's like getting out of working in your business and working on your business, which is what everyone says they want, but nobody makes the time to do. And so, yeah, even just that little bit can totally transform your whole outlook.
So how do you, what do you do now? Like now you have your business and you have your babies. What do you do now, like to like self-care type stuff or to take time for yourself and to kind of stay on track?
So when I set my goals, the way I operate my business, like I run in 90-day segments. Every 90 days, I have 3 main goals that I set during those 90 days. 2 are business, and I always make one of those personal. Because for a long time, I did all 3 business, and then there was never any time in there for me because I was always so focused on my business. So I make it a point now, first and foremost, to always have a personal goal that I'm working towards. So to give you an example, like this quarter, I'm working towards just my overall health. After having a baby and breastfeeding and that whole process of like kind of giving my body away for 2 years, I'm like ready to get it back, not in the sense of losing the baby weight. Like I don't really have baby weight or anything like that to lose, but just in the sense of getting back to mindful eating, regular exercise, and just feeling good, like doing things naturally to boost my energy instead of reaching for that extra cup of coffee or, extra vitamin B or whatever it is, like to try to feel more energy. So getting proper rest. I hired a nutritionist that I'm working with and just completed a 10-day detox, like a nutritional detox. So all of those things, that's kind of been my focus this quarter. And then just, day-to-day stuff, you hear about massages and pedicures. I do all that kind of stuff too. But as far as really like nourishing myself on a deeper level, that's the main thing. I always make sure that one of my goals is focused on, me and my family and my priorities, and asking myself, like, if I choose, work, or if I choose something else, how does this affect, my relationship with God, my husband, and my kid? Like, how is it going to affect those 3 things?
Yeah.
So
that's really awesome. I love that you set a personal goal. I actually don't think I have set a personal goal in a while. And I used to for sure, but it was kind of like as the business started growing and taking off, I got so focused on trying to like set these 90-day goals for my business. And I'm so, it's not that I don't take care of myself. I go on walks like almost every day, probably like 4 to 5 days a week. It's my favorite thing to do, but I haven't set an actual goal. I'm going to do that. So I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm actually going to set like a real personal goal for myself.
Do it.
I know,
It's
I'm
so
going
funny.
to.
Yeah, when I sit down and actually like revisit my goals every week, and it's like when I get to the 3rd one, which the 3rd one's always my personal, it's refreshing because I'm like, I get, you get in the business mindset. I'm like, I got to do this. Okay, to achieve goal 1. Okay, goal 2. I got to do this. And then it's like I get to goal 3 and I'm like, oh, tonight I get to go on a date night, or oh, tonight I get to go to dinner with a friend. Like this is so great.
I love it. I love it. Have you read the book Atomic Habits?
No.
I just finished it and it's really good. And it's he gives you all kinds of like ways to actually establish habits and just that they're actually have nothing to do with the amount of time you do them, but it's like the like the actual act of doing them. So if it's something you only do once a month, it's going to, it's going to be a lot harder to stick to that habit. But if it's something you do every day or even a couple times a day, it's going to happen a lot quicker. And anyways, it just, what you were just talking about reminded me of it. And one of my friends just read the book too. And so she's doing one of his tips, and she actually has like jars. Like, so one of the ways to help you create a habit is if you can physically see that you're making progress. So she has like a jar for all these, for her like self-care, for like meditation, and, for every little thing that she wants to keep doing. And then she can keep putting a penny in each of those jars. That way she's seeing like the progress, because some of those things you don't see progress. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
You're not going to see progress from meditating every day, or you're not going to see progress from going on a date night once a week. But if you can like physically see it, it helps you establish that and like kind of see the reward. So anyways, sorry, that was like a total tangent, but it's a great book. There's some really great tips in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, I mean, you see that jar filling up over time, and at least it lets your brain relax, I think, because it's like, I would imagine like when you see that, your brain is at ease knowing that even though you're not noticing the little changes every day, that over time it is adding up. And it's just that visual reminder. That's powerful.
Yeah. Super cool. She had one for like with her and her husband, and like date night and sex. And I was like, I think if I put a jar out that said that, my kids would freak out.
That's funny. That's awesome.
So I'm like, yeah, I won't be able to put that jar out, but oh, so amazing. Okay. So I love that you set that personal goal. And then are you like strict about scheduling time with your husband and like family time, or have you gotten yourself into just like kind of the routine of it? How do you make sure that like you separate your work life from your family time?
It's a little bit of both. The way we got ourselves into the routine that we are in now was from scheduling it out to start. So when we first really decided, like, we've got to put each other in our marriage first, like, I mean, if you have any of you that are listening have kids, like, that very first year, if it's your very first kid, you'll be like, what just happened? Like, oh my gosh. So we were kind of in that this past year, our little guy just turned 1. And so we had made a point to say, okay, every second Friday and every fourth Friday, we do a date, whether it's I'm meeting him for lunch, whether we're going out to dinner, seeing a show, whatever it is. Like, we knew we had guaranteed help with the baby that day, and that we just set aside that time. That was where we started. But now we're to the point where every evening we eat dinner together. We climb in bed, we read our books, we just chat about our day. Like, we reserve like what we love watching Netflix, but we now only watch it like on the weekends. It's kind of just like a fun thing to do, and really just make that time during every day to connect to, so that it doesn't even, I mean, we still go on dates and stuff, of course, but it's not like it has to be like, I found myself like waiting until date night to connect with him and to talk and to just like let him know what was going on in my world and hear what was going on in his. So I got to a point where I'm like, I don't like that. Like, I don't like saving everything up for date night. Like, it was great to start, but as things evolved, as we started to become more connected and all of that, I was like, I want that more. So we just kind of made it to where it's like a daily thing now.
That's really awesome. I love that. I really like that. I think we watch too much TV at night.
Oh, and we're like all about the shows. Like, I'm telling you, like, if you name it, we've seen it. We probably watched every season.
Yeah,
because it's so how we unwind. But.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's kind of how I unwind too. We went through like a couple of years where we didn't even have TV. We like did the whole got rid of cable thing and all that. And
we did too. That's so funny.
And it was actually really awesome. Like, I loved that time. And sometimes I'm like, we should do it again. But part of it is too, our kids are older now, and we kind of have like favorite shows that we watch as a family. So it's just kind of our time to just come back together. Everybody gets to just chill, not worry about work or school or church or anything, and just kind of chill. So, but I do like that. I think that I need to set like a time. It's like, okay, TV's off. We're going to go just decompress, talk things out. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That. Or even like, the TV doesn't come on until 8 p.m. or something, from 6 to 8, we have dinner and just like hang out as a family, whatever it might be. But yeah, just to have that and to build that into kind of your everyday life, as opposed to just, having that quality time here and
Yeah,
there.
that's awesome. So, Courtney, how can people like not necessarily find you? Like, what is it that you do? Are you just like a one-on-one coach? Do you offer, how do you help women who are like feeling like how you and I were a few years ago?
Yes. Yeah. So two primary ways. So first, I have a digital group coaching experience that I open the doors to a few times a year. This is new. I just completed the very first iteration of this with a round of, it was a beta round with founding members, and it was amazing. So we will definitely be opening the doors again to that later
Love
this
it.
year. And then from there, I also offer a 3-day StressLESS mastermind retreat. This is a 3-day live event where you get to have 72 hours to yourself, away from everything, away from all the demands and pressures on you, where you can just really take that time and space to hear yourself think and to get back in touch with who you truly are.
Oh, I love
And so
it.
that is such a powerful experience, you know, for the women who go through that program. And so those are the two primary ways. And then occasionally I'll open up the doors, you know, one-on-one coaching. I'm not doing that as much now, but certainly, you know, I kind of cherry pick now, you know, if it's someone I'm like
Yeah.
really eager to work with and they really are eager to work with me, then it's like, it's just kind of like, great, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's
but yeah,
awesome.
so
I love that so much. So I have 2 questions that I ask every guest at the end of the show. And I didn't tell you these, I don't think, did I? They're not
no.
very hard. They're not hard or trick questions. So the first one is, what does living on purpose look like to you or mean to you?
That's such a good question. I think for me, it just means living in alignment with what you were put on this earth to do. Because you have been, you know, that's already been written on your heart. And even if you're not sure what it is, you haven't discovered it yet, it's there. So slow down and listen, because it's already there. And that to me is what that means, just living in alignment with that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Slow down and listen. And that's so true, because I think some people who don't realize that they have a purpose, it's just because they haven't taken that time to find out what it truly is. So that's beautiful. Okay, and then the last question is, what is one piece of advice that you have for like the entrepreneur who is just starting out? Like some sort of business advice.
Slow down and listen. Really though, that was one of the things that I wish I would have done more in the early days of my business. Because when I first started my business, I was so gung-ho about achieving goals and hitting milestones and increasing my paycheck and like all of the things to grow, that I really didn't slow down and listen enough to where my heart was leading me. And, you know, I was putting content out there that I thought would resonate with people when I wasn't slowing down to listen to my people and all of that. So there was a lot of ways that I could have slowed down and just become a better listener to myself and to others, that I think would have saved me a lot of headache and heartache in the early days of my business and getting it off the ground. And looking back now, I can so see that. But that's something that I would highly recommend. You know, even if you just put that CEO hat on for 15 minutes of your week, like we talked about, it is a game changer because it allows you to really stay close to your purpose and to live that out in your life and in your business.
Yeah, it's so true. And it is so intertwined. And that's what I'm super passionate about as well, is, you know, like, you can have the best business plan and strategy in place, but if your home life and your self life are not in order, that business is never going to work. Or you know, maybe it'll take off, but it's not going to fulfill you. So it is so important to just really keep those two connected.
Yes, because there's a human that's running the business always above everything. And so if there's anything out of alignment that, you know, that human is going through, the business is going to feel the effects.
For sure. Wow, that was powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so where can people find you so that they can get some StressLESS help?
Yes, so I hang out on Instagram all the time. At Courtney Elmer _ is my handle. And on Facebook too, you can find me on Facebook. Those are kind of my 2 places where I'm at all the time. Or my website, CourtneyElmer.com.
Okay, and I'll be sure to link those up in the show notes. Thank you so much, Courtney, for taking time out of your day to talk with me and my amazing listeners. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, Corie, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Courtney. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks so much for listening, you guys. I hope that you were inspired by Courtney to stress less and to live more. And you guys can find all of the info for Courtney's site and her Instagram and all of that good stuff in the show notes for today's episode. You can go to CorieClark.com/19. That's just the number 19. And you can find all the links there to Courtney's stuff, to anything that you need from me. And we will see you back here next week on another episode of Purpose.